guys, Mr. Beast of this here with a deck tech for Modern. By no means am I an amazing brewer, but this deck I think is super fun. Although super basic, it's something you can really enjoy if you're really into just big green monsters and aggressive red. So to start with, what we have here, we have 5 basic mountains and 12 forests. This is the very base of your mana curve. Mana is important within this deck, getting your mana early, obviously, as it's a ramp deck, but because you have so many ramp sorceries, it's not so important to have so many mountains, because early game green is more important than getting your ramp up, so you can use that later on to then get your mountains, so you can afford to play less mountains. So there is something some slightly more complex is added to this land base. You have 2 evolving wilds, which I'll explain later because it comes into context with some of the creatures, and then 1 Kessig Wolf one. It's very basic in a ramp deck. You're just pumping stuff. You're eventually going to have so much mana, but this will become really difficult to deal with, and it'll become just a huge pump spell for you. So hopefully you don't want to see the Kessig too early, and I'll explain when you want to see the evolving wilds a bit later. So to go along with this, what you have is you have your sorceries when it comes to ramp, 2 of which in this is Pilgrimage, and 3 of which are Ramp and Growth. I've experimented with numbers of these, and I found that too many just becomes, it's too difficult. There's so much ramp in this deck between creatures and sorceries, for having too many of them, it just became ridiculously hard to get to your creatures because you were dealing with so much ramp. So I feel like this is a good number. So to go along with this, it's supported by what I think might be the greatest green creature of all time, which is 4 copies of Birds of Paradise. Your goal in your opening hand is to start with at least 1 bird, a Ramp and Grow or Nisage, Pilgrimage, and 2 forests. That's sort of your ideal situation. And to go along, just when you're ramping slightly later, sort of turn 3, turn 2, you want to be playing a Solemn Simulacrum. It's such a good value card. 4 mana for a 2/2 body, whatever, but drawing that land and drawing a card when it's destroyed, which you're probably going to end up using this as a chump blocker against a more aggressive starting deck. It's just super value, and it's one of those things I've been trying to find room for a playset for, but it's been really difficult to find things to cut in this deck. So talking of aggressive decks, one thing that's sort of solid in this one format, which has been unbanned a few years ago, which is just too good not to play, is 3 copies of Wild Nacotl. Again, trying to find a space for a playset, but ideally in your opening hand you're going to have a Birds of Paradise and Evolving Wild, and the forest you're going to play your forest, birds, pass them, and go to Evolving Wilds, fetching a mountain, tap your bird to get a Wild Nacotl. You're going to have a 3/3 on turn 2, and hopefully from there you'll go on to play your ramp cards and get into your bigger creatures, but it's just absolutely solid as a card in itself. And again, another set of early cards, 3 copies of Tarmogoyf. These are proxies, so if you're not in a proxy friendly environment, what I recommend is either copies of Scavenging Ooze or Huntmaster. So this goes into why we have multiple copies of Evolving Wilds. It's just hopefully on turn 2 you can play it, get a mountain, although it comes in tapped, which is why we're not playing 4 copies, is simply because it slows momentum down too much. So we play Wild Nacotl turn 2, cracking this to get a mountain, turning it into a 3/3, and giving a counter onto our Tarmogoyf. So what are we ramping into? What's the point? So sort of your early game, we're thinking Thragtusk. Again, Thragtusk will deal, if you can survive a really fast deck, you can play a turn 3, turn 4 Thragtusk. It's almost impossible to get turn 2 Thragtusk, obviously, but yeah, just it's giving you 2 creatures eventually once it dies, and it's giving you 5 life from that on entry by itself is just absolutely solid. So what are we ramping to? We're going into the whole idea of trying to reach our Primeval Titan. This deck's almost just a Primeval Titan delivery service. So that's what, if you're not aware of what Primeval Titan does, which I'm sure you are, we're just going, and you're always searching, if you don't already get it, for your Kessig Wolf one, and then any other land really. And the whole point is you get your Kessig Wolf and you pump it and you pump it, and it just becomes too much for your opponent to deal with. So along with this, we have a few more creatures because it's quite a creature heavy deck. 4 copies of Thundermaw because it's absolutely solid. It helps you deal with flyers. and it's just got an immediate board presence of 5 damage to their face or to a planeswalker, which helps you deal with not running exactly strict planeswalker removal, as well as a copy of Dragon Lord's Target. Again, it's 5 damage to any target, and it's an 8/8 body with flying for 7. It's just a really great card. And again, I'd love to run multiple copies, but I don't want to cut Thundermaw, because turn 4 Thundermaws and sort of that early game difference between these, when you're going to have this kind of mana, it's really important to have creatures at this point. So between Thragtusk and Thundermaw, you're covering that area, but cutting down either of those is just really difficult to make it work, as far as I have found. Let's throw this all over. So supporting that idea of getting removal from your Thundermaws and your Dragon Lord, you are running a couple of removal spells. You're running 2 copies of Slagstorm and 4 copies of Lightning Bolt. So the idea there being just dealing with aggressive early decks and then dealing with token spam decks. It's really difficult developing the sideboard for this, but the sideboard is almost indefinitely going to include copies of Beast Within and Whip Flares and other Slagstorms, just to deal with aggressive decks, and then also decks which have other big creatures which you can't necessarily deal with. So along with that, your final supporting cards, you're going to be running 2 copies of Domri Raid, just because although all green planeswalkers suit creatures so well, Domri Raid stands out as just an incredible way of getting to your creatures, especially this +1 ability. If you're not aware what it does, it means that late game, if you haven't drawn into your birds or your wild Nakottles, you can draw it not on your draw step, but you can fish for it with your Domri Raid, meaning you're not drawing it on your draw step and then having no other creatures to play, because you can run out of your hand really quick. So your Domri Raid is to keep your hand flush, and to mean that you're not just drawing your Bird's Paradise on turn 5 and having no chance of drawing another large creature. And it also means you can sort of work out what your next card's going to be. If it isn't one of these, you can work out if you're getting a Rampant Griff or Lightning Bolt or whatever, and you can sort of plan around that. So Domri Raid is absolutely amazing. Of course, our ultimate ability is just, it's going to help you win any game when you're playing so many creatures. Speaking of ultimate abilities that are going to help you win the game, Ugin the Spirit Dragon is such a strong card. It's giving you more removal, and along with that, if you manage to ultimate off, your chances of drawing between 3 and 4 creatures off of his ultimate ability, and considering the creature base that you have, but just plonking those onto the table is going to make it just ridiculously difficult for anyone to come back. So Ugin's a great card because of this. You may consider running a 3rd copy of Domri Raid to save you a bit of cash, but I think playing Ugin is just worth it, just because he's such a solid card. So this is kind of in the cheaper side of it. The Tarmogoyf personally are proxies. I'm not sure if I mentioned that already, but the whole deck as Modern goes is pretty on the cheap, because you're not running a lot of expensive lands and such. But there are alternatives. Again, you can run your Huntmasters or your Scavenging Oozes, which all work within the deck. They'll probably go on the sideboard of this deck in my version. And you might also consider cards such as Kitchen Finks to deal with really early aggressive decks because of the life gain, and you can bring it back, so you're chump blocking and stuff. But along with that, you may consider, probably as some of you have worked out if you've been watching Proto for a long time, Proto Dark Ascension, a similar deck was put together by Brian Kibler, and he used Inkmoth Nexus to great success. So that's quite an expensive land card to play, but with your Primeval Titans fetching Inkmoth Nexus and Kessig Wolfrun, it's another win condition, adding to your Planeswalkers, your fast Wild Nakottles, your Thundermaws. You have a lot of ways to win, which are pretty much smashing face, but Inkmoth Nexus at another level, so it'd be something I would consider adding to the deck if you enjoy the deck. And if I find that I don't stray from this deck, I will definitely consider putting Inkmoth Nexuses in once I feel like it's worth the financial return on that. So thank you guys for watching. If you have any feedback, awesome. Again, I stress this is not a competitive deck. In my last deck a long time ago, I got a lot of comments saying how it was uncompetitive, how does it deal with X decks, Y decks. It doesn't really. It's a really fun deck for those who want to build ramp, and because it has so many creatures such as Birds and Primeval Titan, which are going to be in so many modern decks, you have a lot of transferable cards here within this base, because I'm pretty much just playing all the cards which I find fun. So if you enjoy these kind of cards, you're going to find they're going to transfer to your other green red decks. So thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you again next time.